Allison here. Today we are going to be making some kind of sticky teriyaki wings with some twice baked potatoes and some dinosaur cornbread. So we're going to start by coating up our wings to go in the oven to toast up, and then we're going to, or crisp up, and then we'll make a sticky teriyaki glaze to kind of glaze them for the last part of their baking. We're going to use a mixture of cornstarch and flour, as well as some onion powder, pepper, and garlic salt as the base to kind of coat them up with. Then we'll heat them up or bake them up in the oven, and then we'll kind of crisp them up in the end on the air fryer setting. But we're going to be baking our cornbread, so we're going to start them off at 350 for their first initial bake. But we've got about, I want to say, probably 7.5 pounds of wings here. Probably a little less now that we've kind of clipped off the little wingette parts, the little flapper thing at the end. I don't know what that thing is called. But the last part, the tips. There we go. It's better than the flapper. Works. So sprinkle a little bit of flour over, a little bit of cornstarch, because we're going to just kind of dust them all up. And you just want enough to really coat them all up so that they're really dried out. That way they'll have a nice crispiness to them. And so when we coat them up with our glaze later, they'll be crispy and sticky and delicious. We're going to add some onion powder, which will add, again, a nice great flavor to it. So a nice good sprinkle over. And then just a light dusting of pepper and garlic salt. Don't need much, but just a little bit. And then we're going to get in there with our hands, and we're going to really coat all of our chicken up with our flour, cornstarch, onion powder, pepper, and garlic salt mixture on there until they've all got a nice little dusting on them. There we go. You know what? I might need to dust a little bit more on. But let's see. Let's give them a toss. You know what? I actually think they might be pretty good. There's some more dusting down at the bottom. I've got my really big bowl out here for this. Okay. I think they're good. The whole point is you just want to make sure you dry out any moisture. That way they'll crisp up on there. The natural fat in the chicken will kind of make a nice crispy skin on it. There we go. Okay. Slide this over here. And we're going to start laying out our wings. And we're going to get these all out here, and then slide this. I'm trying to move it over without touching it. There we go. All on here. I'm going to try to get them all on one baking sheet because, and this is a big baking sheet and a half, because we're also going to be using our oven for our cornbread. And then at the end, we'll also have our twice baked potatoes that will be going in at the very end. But I should have plenty of room. On here, so we'll spread these out, and then we'll get these in the oven to start cooking off. And I have my parchment paper down. That's really just to make cleanup towards the end a little bit easier, so you have less kind of that fat and skin stickage. Here. Slide these guys. I'm going to rotate just a little bit because I want them to kind of not be touching each other so that they all can get nice crispy areas. So I'm just going to give a little twist and rotate here until they've all kind of got their own little spot on here. Okay, let me give my hands a good wash. And then we can start baking these up in the oven. Again, I have it set at a nice hot 350. We're gonna start baking them up, and then when we are the very end, after we glaze them, we'll do our final kind of a higher heat bake on them for this, but this is our initial start. I'm gonna start them on the top rack, but when I put my cornbread in, I will move them down. Okay. And we'll make a lovely glaze using a nice kind of teriyaki Asian themed glaze for them. Okay, while those are starting their bake, let's get our cornbread going so then we can pop that in the oven and have that start baking up as well, because these are our two things that are really going to take our longest to make. So we've got our dinosaur baking tray that we're going to be using here. I was putting stuff away and Teddy saw that and he really, really wanted it. And I was like, sure, we can use our dinosaur tray tonight. So we're going to start off with 1 1/4 cups of buttermilk. If you don't have buttermilk, that is fine. Most of the time I don't have buttermilk. In fact, I don't have buttermilk today. But what I use instead of buttermilk when I don't have it is a mixture of whole milk and cream with a squeeze of lemon juice to get the same consistency and flavor.
I do have a question. Do you ever fry your cornbread?
I have fried cornbread before and stuff like that. I've done it in a skillet. This recipe that I'm using is my honey cornbread, and it is a favorite. So this is the one I typically make, but there are times where I'll do a skillet cornbread, and then I will finish it off in the in the oven. And then there's also like kind of the little like corn cakes that you can make as well, which I've done before. But this is the honey kind of cornbread that my kids really, really love. Most of the time I do it in the mini loaves, or sometimes I'll do it in mini muffins on here. But today we're doing it in dinosaurs because dinosaurs are cool. Okay, we have 1 1/4 cups of buttermilk, or my own little mixture of it. We're gonna add in a 1/2 cup of butter. And get a spatula out. And kind of mix this around.
And how many people are you cooking for tonight?
So for tonight, we're cooking for 7, but I'm hoping I plan to have extras for my parents tomorrow. So really 9 on there, because wings are my stepdad's favorite food. So he'd be very, very sad if there weren't wings. And if we ate through 7.5 pounds of wings tonight, that's a lot of wings. Now it's possible, but after a while, I've cut some of the kids off. They do really love wings. Okay. We're going to add in 2 eggs. And see, then I don't always buy wings because a lot of times they're pretty expensive, but occasionally you get these good deals. And so I got a great deal on them this week and I got them. The worst time of the year to buy wings when they're so expensive is right around the Super Bowl. I swear they like mark them up so much right around the Super Bowl because everybody wants to make wings for the Super Bowl. Okay, we're going to mix our 2 eggs in there. Make sure I popped our yolk so we've got it mixed in well. And then we're going to add in our sugars. We're going to use 2/3 of granulated sugar, and then we're going to add in 2 tablespoons of honey. Now, most of the honey the honey flavor for this cornbread is actually going to come in the honey butter that we brush on top of our cornbread after we bake it. It gives it such a great flavor. But we do add a little bit into the bread now. It's going to give the cornbread a darker color. So our cornbread is not going to come out a pale yellow like a lot of cornbread. It's going to come out more of a golden brown because that honey does make it a darker color, but it gives it a great flavor. So we're going to start off with 2/3 cup of granulated sugar. and then 2 tablespoons of honey. And then I'm kind of just going to eyeball my 2 tablespoons. That's about 1, and that's about 2. And we'll mix them in. Here. And then we're going to add in a half a teaspoon of salt and a half a teaspoon of baking soda. There. Let's just mix that all up. We can do lots of mixing now, but when we get to adding in our cornmeal and our flour, we want to minimize the mixing, because if you over mix, then you'll lead to a denser cornbread, and you want to minimize the mixing because it is a butter base, so that you have a lighter, fluffier cornbread. So half a teaspoon of salt. And I did use salted butter in here. If you are going to use unsalted butter, you're probably going to want to add about another 1/4 of a teaspoon of salt. But for right now, since I use salted butter, a half a teaspoon of salt and a half a teaspoon of baking soda. So we'll mix these guys in. Make sure that baking soda gets mixed all the way around. And then we're going to add in, let's see, we don't need our sugar right here. We need our flour. A cup of flour and a cup of cornmeal. Let me grab a measuring cup for the cornmeal. And you don't want like a self-rising cornmeal, just a plain kind of cornmeal. And yellow. Don't get the white cornmeal. It's not as sweet.
You have a question. Was that baking powder or soda?
Baking soda. So you're going to use a half a teaspoon of baking soda. Measuring out. So we've got a cup of our cornmeal and a cup of all-purpose flour. And then we're going to mix these until they're just combined, and then they'll be ready to spoon into our little dinosaurs.
Do you have a cookbook?
Not yet. That's kind of in the works right now. That's my goal for this year, hopefully sooner in the year rather than later.
I'm putting it out there. End of March.
End of March. Phew. He's some really lofty goals. I think he forgot that we have 5 kids. That's our hope. I do have a good kind of start on it, since I have a little over 100 recipe cards already made. And my goal is to kind of be able to transfer those recipe cards that we have for our members to kind of the format of it, and then kind of create some filler ones to have a good kind of complete recipe, but a cookbook. Kind of make it like the nice old school cookbooks with a couple more pictures and tutorials on there. But that's my goal.
Can you explain the difference between baking soda and baking powder?
Yes. So baking powder is a complete leavening agent because it has both the acid and the base in it, where baking soda needs another reactant in it to cause it to give the leavening agent in it. So baking powder has baking soda in it, and then it typically has like a cream of tartar or a citric acid, something that causes it to react, which will give you the puff. If per ounce to ounce, like teaspoon to teaspoon, baking powder is not as strong because there's less baking soda in it. But baking soda, you have to have another reactor in your cooking to use it. So that's kind of the main difference to them. They're very similar, but one's a complete leavening agent and one's not. Okay, we are going to spray down our little dinosaurs. Whenever you use a pan like this, you want to make sure you get every little nook and cranny. That way they'll slide out well. And then I'm gonna get a spoon so it's a little bit easier to scoop these guys in.
Do you have that pan in your Amazon store?
You know what? I believe I do have it in there. This is a Nordic ware, and I did buy it on Amazon, so I'm fairly certain I have it in there because I'm pretty sure I put all of my stuff that I bought on Amazon from my bakeware that I have in there. But yeah, I'm fairly certain because I've got a lot of weird pans over the years because I really do like to do funny like baking stuff because I've got a train one and like these little, I've got the pumpkins and little like flowers and honeycombs. I have this presents and snowflakes and Christmas ones, which I'm surprised I didn't actually use this year. And I have a bunny one, a full pumpkin one where it's actually one giant pumpkin. I've got a lot of crazy ones. Here we go. Fill this out. We're going to put in a little bit in each one, and then we'll kind of come back over with the remaining. A lot of times when I make banana bread, we'll do kind of banana bread in these and make little banana bread dinosaurs.
Can you go over the spices for the chicken wings when you get them all?
Yes. So right now on the chicken wings, they're it's a simple coating on here. We're just doing a crisp up coating because we're going to be making a sticky teriyaki glaze for them. So on the chicken wings right now, we have kind of cornstarch, flour, onion powder, garlic, salt, and black pepper. But we're going to be making a teriyaki glaze that will be coating with them. So it's a simple base on the wings. It's not meant to be the big full flavor profile glaze or base on it. It's more of give them a crispy coating on there. Okay, we have this. Let me grab some mini, since we're here, I've got them right down here. I'll do some mini loaves. I told you I have 1,000,001 bakeware. Start off with one at a time. And see how far we get in here. I'm trying not to fill it too high because I don't want it to take too long to cook. I'd rather have a shallow mini loaf than a fatter, like thicker one, because I want them all to bake up around this roughly the same time. We're done with that. Now these loaves will bake a little bit longer than the dinosaurs. Here. Okay. And get this in here. Scoop those. Got pretty much all of my little cornbread. I have a feeling my oldest daughter is going to claim a whole mini loaf to herself. She loves cornbread, and I think she's going to stake a claim on that. Normally, I do this in my mini loaf pan, and she tries to claim 2 mini loaves of the things. She's going to claim one of these, I have a feeling. Okay, let's go get these in the oven. These are going to, let me first clean this up real quick. These are going to bake for 350 for about, they're going to bake at slightly different times. One's going to bake for, the dinosaurs are probably going to bake for about 18 minutes since they're more like a corn muffin size. And those are probably going to bake for 22 minutes, maybe 20 some more. I'm going to take my chicken down because I always like my baked goods to get a little bit more heat. We will finish those up on the air fryer setting so they'll crisp up more, but this way that chicken gets cooked all the way through. got those in. Got our mini loaves in. I'm going to set my timer here for 18 minutes. That way we can check on our dinosaurs, see if they are ready on there. I'm going to give my hands a quick rinse. And while my hands are wet, I have to do another stretch and fold because it's been about 30 minutes. So I'm just going to do this real quick. I'm prepping up some sourdough, a couple more loaves.
You have a question. When you plan your meals, do you try to plan them with things that cook about the same temperature in the oven?
You know what? Around the same temperature, but not exactly. I always plan what can kind of flex with other ones. So the chicken wings typically would cook at a higher temperature, but they can flex on there. The baked goods can't flex. So those are what you have to cook at that temperature. But the chicken, I'm going to be crisping up later. So that kind of works well with it. There's just certain things that can tolerate different variety of temperatures. And so those are like your flex foods. So like potatoes typically can handle a variety of temperatures. Meats can typically handle it, but certain things like baked goods cannot. They need very precise temperatures. So they typically they dictate what the heat is going to be. And so that's kind of like when I say like, we have it in there. Typically, I would have those in at around maybe like 375, 400 kind of cooking at a much higher temperature, but they can handle 350. It takes a little bit longer, but we'll finish them up at a higher temperature at the end. Let's get our twice baked potatoes going here. So these are our baked potatoes that we had them baked up. I did my traditional baking method where I wash them, scrub them, poke a bunch of holes in them, put a little pat of butter on, sprinkle them with a little bit of salt, and then I wrap them up with foil and I bake them at 300 for about 3 hours. And you'll know they're ready is when you can give them a good squish and they like dent in. The aluminum foil keeps the natural moisture in the potato, which prevents it from drying out so that you have more of a moisture instead of a really dry potato.
For your sourdough, what temperature do you cook them at?
So it's a 2-part cooking. I do 500 with the lid on. So I do mine in a Dutch oven. I don't do an open baking part. So I'll preheat my Dutch oven to about 500 degrees for, between around 30 minutes. And then I will bake in my Dutch oven that's preheated for 20 minutes at 500. And then I take the lid off and bake for another 20 minutes at 450. Now, some loaves, like the croissant loaf, I bake a little bit longer because that butter kind of cools the loaf a little bit more, insulates it, so it needs a little bit longer in the baking method for it. So, I had to change it up just a little bit depending on it. But I do the Dutch oven method. That way I don't have to, worry about steaming it, spraying like down the loaves and getting them wet or anything like that. Okay, I'm going to take my little drizzles of melted butter. If there's any drizzles, I'll put them in my pan on there. That's salted goodness. For our twice baked potatoes, we're going to essentially kind of cut out a little boat here. And I'm going to kind of peel off this kind of top skin. And then we will scrape out our potatoes. So you want to bake them and let them cool so you can handle them, but they're still hot.
Do you ever do sweet potatoes like this?
I have done sweet potatoes before, but I will say majority of my kids are not a huge sweet potato fan for it. But I've done them, but I've done them more of a sweet potato. So think about more like a sweet potato casserole twice baked potato. So a little bit different on there. Delicious. And almost where you mix it in and you mix the base with, brown sugared candied pecans, and then you kind of stuff it back in there and you top it with some marshmallow and more candied pecans. So a little bit different variation of it on there. My kids, they're not a huge fan of it. Except I will say my little ones, Jack and Teddy, they actually like it, but I think they like it because they love the marshmallow part of it and the candied pecans. They always like to eat those. So we're just scraping up our boat. You don't have to get, meticulous where you've got every little bit off. Just do as close as you can. I will say the cameraman is an excellent twice baked potato uh, scraper outer. I had I kind of cooked this meal for my friend, and I had to make 25 twice baked potatoes, and I was running short on time, and I needed his help. And I don't often ask for his help in the kitchen, but I needed it. And I was like, oh, surely he could handle this. And I showed him what to do, and I had a very watchful eye at first, and I was there. But he did an excellent job. He really did a great job scraping them out on here. Looks like I've got a little bit of a bruise in here. So I'm going to scrape some of that bruise out. Luckily, we have plenty of potato to make it through. There we go. But I took these out of the oven about 30 minutes ago, kept them in their aluminum foil so they're still hot in here, which will be great because the butter will still melt, but the potato is warm but not scalding hot, which means I can touch it on there. When I had my husband making the little boats for twice baked potatoes, he did not have the luxury of cool twice baked potatoes. He was scraping them out and they were piping hot. I'm actually going to put my butter in here so it can start melting on there. I'm going to put in, because we have about 5, I like to do about a tablespoon per potato of butter. So we have 5, although I have to say, I think this potato right here counts as 2 potatoes because this is a giant potato. I have a feeling this is the one my husband's going to call dibs on because this is a potato. Actually, you know what? This is the one Lena and Torn are going to fight over. They're going to go in there and they're going to both call dibs on it because they love twice baked potatoes. They're going to fight over the cornbread loaves and this. They should be happy. This is a meal that they all love. Except Evie. Evie does not like potatoes. I have not met very few kids who don't like potatoes in any form whatsoever, except she has one form that she likes, and it's probably a form that most other kids don't like. She likes salt and vinegar chips. That is the only form of potatoes she likes. She does not like French fries or tater tots, but she does like salt and vinegar chips. You can give her a cherry tomato, she'll be happy as can be. Sweet peppers, love them. Potato, a French fry, won't touch it. Mashed potatoes, won't touch it. See, she's just a weird kid. Give her lemon slices, lime slices, eat them straight. Wasabi almonds, she'll eat those. She's we're like letting her birthday's in the summer, but because it's in the summer, all of her friends are off and she can't really do a birthday party. So we're letting her do like a mid-year birthday party. And she's like planning out what she's going to do. And she's like, I can't decide what we're going to have for dinner. She's like, can we have pizza, Chipotle, and sushi? And I'm like, we can't do that. I'm like, that is a lot of different food groups in there. You can decide. And I'm like, that I don't know how I feel about those 3 food groups together with a bunch of girls. I just feel like that's going to end poorly on there. And she goes, but I really love California rolls, but I really want my steak quesadilla from there. And I'm like, well, we can all have these at some other times. We don't, just because it's not even your real birthday, but your birthday celebration with your friends doesn't mean we have to have all of your favorite little takeout foods and whatnot. She's like, I don't know. Maybe can we have it? And I was like, oh, you're crazy girl. She also apparently has promised her friends that I am supposedly going to be picking them up Starbucks in the morning. And I am like, okay, we got to rein this in. I was like, what kind of party is this? I did not agree to any of this. I feel like it is getting out of hand quickly. All I said is, I'm like, you can have 6 friends, and somehow it has turned into this buffet from 3 different restaurants and Starbucks in the morning. None of that has been parent approved. Okay, we just about got all of these scooped out. Our butter should be about melted. Okay. Okay, let's get there. Let me get my hands a little bit washed. And let me get a little masher thing. Let's see which one will be good for mashing. You know what? I actually think this one will be good. I need a firm spatula that can smush down. There we go. So I'm going to mix that butter in. We're just going to start our mash, and then we're going to add in some sour cream, green onions, garlic salt, and some cheddar cheese. Let me get that little piece of skin out. I think my kids love twice baked potatoes so much because it has everything they love in their potato without them having to do any work. That's what I think it is. Let's get our sour cream in here. These were always growing up, my mom. These were always a special dinner night. It was always somebody's birthday or whatnot, and my mom would make twice baked potatoes for us. Okay, we're going to add in a nice good dollop of sour cream. And I don't like to go too heavy on the green onions because, sometimes the kids are like, oh, there's something green in there, but you've got to have a little bit. Chives also work wonderful. They're a bit more fragrant and less pungent, but we're going to snip these nice and small, get them in there. And then I have some white cheddar. Yellow cheddar also is wonderful. It gives you a nice little pop of orange if you have it. Let's get these guys. I'm just going to stick with using the nice bright top green parts. When you get down to the whiter parts of the green onion, those are going to be more astringent, more full of that, stronger onion flavor. And this is just a sharp cheddar cheese. We'll grate it in here because we'll mix some in, and then we'll also grate some over the top of each of our potatoes. And then, of course, we'll add in some garlic salt. Get that in there. I don't put, I'm aiming for about a half a cup or so, on there. I don't like to go super cheesy in there because it will, kind of mess with the consistency of it. Nice sprinkle of garlic salt over. Gives it a nice garlicky flavor. We'll mash it up. I'll give it a quick taste, make sure it has enough flavor in there. The cheese will also add a saltiness to it. Yeah, another piece of skin. Apparently, I missed like 3 pieces of skin here. Not that we couldn't have just left them in there and the kids could have eaten them. Okay, let me taste and see. You add a little bit more garlic salt. And then we should be just about good. Okay. And now we're going to stuff these guys back up. Now, with them adding the extra stuff, you should be able to really fill up the boats. Little potato canoes. We'll go through, we'll add a little bit, and then we'll finish them off. And there. We'll get these guys stuffed up nice and delicious. Now, if you really want your potatoes to look bougie, you can pop your filling into a piping bag and pipe them in there to give you that, and use a really wide tip. But we're just going to cover it with cheese anyways, and we're eating it, so it doesn't need to be bougie. But if you want it, you can make it nice.
You have a question? Can you go over what's in them so far?
Yes. So in these, we have butter, sour cream, green onions, sharp cheddar cheese, garlic salt, and and then our insides of our potatoes that we had already baked up. So pretty simple, but delicious base for it. And my kind of rule of thumb is about a tablespoon of butter per potato. Now, these are big potatoes. If you're using smaller potatoes, use a little bit less. But this is a big potato. And now we're going to grate and add some more cheese over the top of them. And kind of there we go.
And can you add paprika for color?
If you definitely, paprika is such a mild spice that you won't really notice the flavor. You could also use yellow cheddar cheese instead of white, and that will give you a nice yellow color to it for it as well. I just used up all of my yellow cheddar cheese making mac and cheese earlier this week or last week or whatnot. And I have lots of sharp white cheddar cheese, which they all taste practically the same. And depending on which cheese you do, so if you have a more mild cheddar, it will be a bit smoother in flavor on there, a bit more creamy, versus a sharp will have a little bit more of a tang. Okay, we're not going to put these in quite yet because that cheese will melt up really quickly. We still need to make our glazes, but let's go check on our cornbread here. And then we can turn up, if it's done, we can turn up our temperature. Steamed up. And that one looks done. These still need a little bit longer, but these look done. Yep, nice little firm little dots on there. Just got to find a way to grip them with my lobsters. Those corn loaves, probably I'm just going to add, those will be ready probably in 2 minutes, and then we can pop up the air fryer setting, which is then going to cook everything really, really fast at a higher temperature here. Nice firm. When you're checking on your doneness for like cornbread or muffins, don't just rely on the looks. Sometimes you can have a beautiful dome. Give it a little tap. If it's not firm, then put it and bake it longer. You see how when I touch it, my finger doesn't sink in. It's not jelly or anything like that. That's when you know that it's going to have a nice, it's going to be like cooked all the way through. If it's not cooked out firm, it's going to be like doughy or like gummy and won't be as good. And then they'll kind of cave in. Let's get this out. We'll transfer these. Don't ever transfer directly out of these right when they're hot right away. The pan needs to cool down for about 5 minutes. If you try to take them out right away, they'll actually stick. It needs to cool for a few minutes, and then they will come out easier. But then don't wait too long. You've got a kind of Goldilocks zone. If you wait too long, then they will stick again. So after about 5 minutes, we can transfer them out, but we can actually start making our honey butter to drizzle over the top of them. And then we'll make our glaze. By the time we get our honey butter made, we should have our be able to put our oven up to nice hot. The other one should be done cooking. So we're going to melt about I need a little bit more butter because I need about 4 tablespoons of butter, because I need 1/4 cup of butter, and then we're going to use 2 tablespoons of honey. But we're going to melt our butter first, and then we'll add in our honey. And this is what we're going to brush over our cornbread, which will add such a great flavor to it. Let's get to making our glaze for our wings. Don't tell me that's been 2 minutes. Has it been 2 minutes already? Apparently it's been 2 minutes, and I can't count time, guys. That is the world's fastest 2 minutes. I don't know what happened in those 2 minutes. Stim it. Let's see. This one, that one's still done. I think they still need a minute more. Okay, I lied. They need more time. No way. No way, Jose. They still need more time. I'm going to put 3 more minutes on there. They're still a little gooey on the top on there. I thought 2 minutes, same way more time. Maybe that's what I was thinking in my mind. The 2 minutes wasn't actually 2 minutes. Okay, let's get our garlic minced up for our glaze. That's what my daughter says. I have time blindness when I'm cooking. She'll ask, oh, when's dinner? And I'm like, oh, how long it'll take? I'm like, oh, it takes this long. And it always takes longer than what I say it's going to take. Okay, we're going to mince up a good amount of garlic for this because we want this nice garlicky flavor. And we've got a lot of wings. We've got about 7.5 pounds of wings we need to kind of coat up. So this is going to be about, let me just cut off this little tip there, about 2 tablespoons of fresh garlic. Now, you can use garlic if you don't have fresh. The main difference between garlic and fresh garlic is garlic is more pungent and acidic in tasting, and this is going to be a bit more mellow. So if you're going to use garlic, use a little bit less because it is a little stronger and intense. This is more mellow and a little bit nicer in flavor. So we're going to mince this up. There. Get it nice and small. And then we're going to actually toast it up in some butter to really bring out the flavors. And then we'll make our glaze, our sticky, delicious glaze to go over our chicken. There we go. I don't want to leave any chunks of garlic too big because, again, smash a little, bring out some extra flavor, because I don't want to have just a huge chunk of garlic on our wing or whatnot. But it does make a difference. Okay, there we go. That should be good. Our butter over here, I'm going to turn it off and we'll just let the residual heat kind of finish melting it and give it a good swirl. Let me wash my hands because that garlic is strong. And then once it's kind of cooled down just a smidge, we'll add in 2 tablespoons of honey to it. And that will be our honey butter. I just don't want it to be too hot to where it kind of crystallizes our honey. Let's get some butter in here so that we can kind of infuse our garlic into our butter. I want enough butter just to kind of coat along the bottom of our pan. Okay, let's go check on that now. I feel like time's fine, but I feel like it is definitely ready now. Because that's 5 minutes more. Still not. That's why I always say I like my other loaves better because they cook faster. Okay, these are still, this is what I'm saying where there's still jelly right there. Let me push them to the farther back. I think it's because I'm opening my oven too much, guys. Timer. We're going to get it done this time. I'm going to do 3 minutes. I say 2 minutes, but it's going to be 3. They're so close. I just don't want them to be overdone. Let's get our butter over here. And that's why I always say, you can't just say one's going to cook at one time because these are our mini dinosaurs and they are already done because they're smaller. And this is why I typically like to cook in the muffins or the mini loaves because they cook up a little bit nicer. Look how cute these guys are.
You have a question? Could you grate the garlic instead of chopping it?
Yes, you could definitely grate it. The only thing is the garlic is smaller, so you just have to be a little bit careful when you're grating it. But the grating will actually bring out more intense flavor than chopping. So depending what cuts you do on it, the more flavor comes out. So mincing it or like really getting that fine, grating will bring out the most intense flavor versus like a slice or a bigger chop or dice. Look at these guys. Rawr. But here are our little dinosaurs. Have them right there. They're so cute. Okay. We're going to get our honey in here, about 2 tablespoons. Now, I will say one thing to make sure anytime you're using honey, especially if you're buying like a local honey or whatnot, taste your honey first and make sure you like it. We bought one honey and we were just not a big fan of it. And it took us a while to realize we didn't like the honey because we used it in a bunch of things before we actually tasted it. And before we took a bite of it raw. And then we realized that was what was making a bunch of things taste funky. And it was just because whatever flour those bees were collecting from, it just tasted like that flour, and it wasn't our cup of tea. Okay, before we brush over our first round of honey butter on them, let's get our garlic over here. I'm going to turn this down super low. There we go. And then we're going to get our garlic simmering on here. Okay, so we've got our honey butter on here. We're going to drizzle it in, get our first kind of round. And this is where you're going to get that nice honey flavor really to seep into your cornbread. Now, if I'm not using the dinosaur ones, then I do it on the tops of it. But since I have the dinosaurs and they're out, we're just soaking them through the bottom. There we go. Okay. Beautiful. Wonderful. Let me turn this down nice and low. Promise, was the last time. I'm going to go grab them out because I promised. And then we're going to bring our chicken wings up and then we'll pour it and we're going to turn our air fryer on to a nice time. I know the cameraman is like, do I really want to come over here again? And I said, you do, because I promise you, they're done this time. I promise. I put them in the back and they are done. Done. They are done this time. I promise, guys. So this size loaf pan takes like 8 minutes longer than the dinosaurs. I don't use this loaf pan size very often. Okay, let me get my chicken. I'm going to move my chicken up a rack and we're going to turn our air fryer on. We'll let that cook up for a second while we make our glaze on here. And then when we glaze up our chicken and we'll bring them out. But I'm going to get my air fryer going. This is going to allow it to crisp up really nice. So I'm going to do my air fry mode at 425, which will be a nice high heat that will crisp it up really well. But the chicken has been cooking for 30 minutes at 350, so it should be cooked all the way through now. Now we're kind of doing the final crisp up deliciousness part. Okay, let's get our glaze made so that we can have it popping in the oven, cooking there. So we've got our garlic here cooking. Let me grab a little bit of brown sugar. We're going to do about a half a cup of brown sugar, lightly packed. We're going to use a little bit of sweet cooking wine. You can also just use some like white wine as you want it, but this is kind of, we need about 2 tablespoons of it, but like the mirin, like the Asian cooking wine. Grab a, do you have a spoon over there? We're going to let that kind of cook. Make like a sticky base for this. Nice. We're going to add in some soy sauce, about 2 tablespoons or so. And bring my temperature up just a little bit. I want that brown sugar to kind of dissolve and kind of form somewhat of a sticky syrup. It will continue to turn into a sticky glaze inside the oven. We're going to put in about a tablespoon of ginger paste. If you don't have ginger paste, you can use about a teaspoon of ground ginger. And give this a nice little mix here. I'm waiting, I'm kind of cooking it until I can no longer feel the grit of the sugar. So until it's kind of dissolved. Give it tasting good. I'm going to add a little bit of our Japanese barbecue sauce, about 3 or so tablespoons. Nice. And let's see. And I think the only thing else I want to add, I need a little bit of tang for this. So let me add in a little rice vinegar. Not a lot of tang, but I want to cut through just with a little bit of tang. Kind of cuts through a little bit of the sweetness, but gives you that nice kind of teriyaki flavor to it. We're going to add in about a teaspoon or so. Yeah. Give this a nice stir. That is good. I'm going to bring it here. Once it kind of comes to a quick boil, I'll pull it off and then we should be good. Let's get our mini loaves out here and we should be able to brush them with honey butter. There we go. They were worth the extra 8 minutes. We'll do there. Next, kind of brush them over, coat them up, let that seep in. And then right before we're about ready to serve, we brush them with a second coating. And this first coat allows that honey butter to seep into the cornbread. And then the second coat sticks on top. Okay, let's grab our wings out. We're going to coat them with our sticky sauce. We'll pop them back in there. We'll pop our wings in there, and then we're going to be about ready for them to finish up. There we go. So we're going to coat them up with our nice sauce. You can see how the wings are already starting to get a nice kind of, they have a nice kind of crispy skin on them. And now we're going to brush them with our glaze. And then we'll pop our potatoes in real quick. Let me get our brush here. So I'm going to brush over each one, kind of coat them up. And then what we'll do is after we kind of coat them up, we'll continue boiling this down to make it really sticky. So then when they come out of the oven, we give another final coating because these will only need a few minutes in the oven to kind of get their last final crispy edge up on them.
Do you have a question? Did you use rice vinegar?
I did use a little bit of rice vinegar in here, about a teaspoon, to give you a little extra tang to it. Kind of cuts through the sweetness of the brown sugar on there. But you want that stickiness from the brown sugar as well. There we go. Coat these up.
And where do you get these wings?
So these wings are actually from Kroger. I got these ones from Kroger this week. I told you I shop at a collection of grocery stores. Kind of look and see where the deals are to be had, you know. Always try to find the best deals. I'm sure, as everyone knows, groceries are an arm and a leg nowadays. Okay. Get these on here. We're going to pop our potatoes in as well. We'll finish these all off. We're going to simmer this down. We'll give our cornbread its last coating while these are cooking up. We're almost got our nice sticky sauce on here too. And then we'll be ready to serve up because these just need another minute or two. And then we'll do our last stretch and fold on our sourdough. Okay. Beautiful. We've got our remaining little base here for our final little kind of coverage here. I'm going to turn this on nice and low for it to continue to simmer and thicken up. Now this, when we cook it in here, it's going to kind of create almost what's kind of on the sheet is almost going to turn a little sticky and like a tar base type thing. It's going to give you a nice kind of sticky wing base. So we're going to get this in here. I'm going to go grab my potatoes so we can slide our potatoes in here and start the cheese to melt up for our twice baked potatoes. Goes right underneath. And those will need about 5 minutes max. While we're waiting for that, let's get I'm going to slide this out of the way. I've got to do another round of my stretch and folds on my sourdough. You can see it's already going through. This is going to make 3 loaves. But look, we already got a nice kind of bubble popping up over here for it. I'm deciding what loaves to make when I do it. But when I do my stretch and folds, because sourdough is a high hydration, you want to use wet hands for it. But we're going to give our nice little stretch here, help kind of develop the little crumb on it.
Do you ever use the oven with the stove?
I do when I'm doing lots of cooking, but as I'm sure a lot of people do, is I actually use this oven for a lot of storage. And when I do a lot of baking where I need to do a lot of things at one time, I'll use this oven as well. I just find that when I'm cooking on the stove, and I have to bake in the oven. The cooking on the stove actually increases the temperature of the oven, that residual heat from the cooktop, so you don't get quite as even as a cook on it. So it's fine if you are going to do like a roast in there or whatnot, but baking cookies and something that's a little bit more delicate doesn't quite have as nice or as even of a bake in here. Okay, this is pretty good. Looks like it's ready for kind of its bulk proof, and then I can shape it up tonight. I'm still deciding which loaves I want to make for it. I'm thinking about doing a Nutella loaf, but a croissant Nutella loaf, because with like a Nutella swirl in it, I don't know, it sounds delicious. Okay, let's get our last little base here finished up. I think I'm going to add just a little bit more base in here so we have a little bit more to thicken up and coat our things. So we'll add a little bit more Japanese barbecue sauce on there, and then just a smidge more soy sauce. Add a little bit of salt to it. There we go. And then let's give our last coating on our honey butter on our cornbread, and then our wing should be just about ready. I'll just turn this up a smidge, but I can start to feel the nice kind of sticky syrup forming. And then we've got our honey butter, which is it's nice because it's a nice kind of sticky syrup there, but it's a sweet and just wonderful, and it just really makes the cornbread wonderful.
Can you go over the dry seasoning on the chicken before the glaze?
Yes. So it's a really simple kind of base that is more for about crisping up the chicken versus flavor. So it is a mixture of flour and cornstarch. And then we added onion powder, garlic salt, and black pepper. And so really simple, because all of the flavor is really going to be in the sticky base that we have on it. Okay. Now these are ready. Let's go check on our wings, because that crisping up should be just about ready here. I can actually smell them, so I think we're just on there. With the air fryer setting, you don't want to do them for too long, because as you can see, they'll get crispy, nice and fast. And look at that, beautiful. Perfect. And then we'll come and grab our potatoes out here in just a second. Gorgeous. We'll coat these up one more time with our remaining sauce. Just another round of it to really just kind of cling over. But they've got that nice kind of extra crispy stick on there, which will be delicious. And as this glaze cools, it will actually thicken up a little bit more. Wonderful. But these are our nice kind of teriyaki crispy chicken wings. So you have that nice crunch because we coated them up with that flour and that cornstarch in the beginning. But then we have this kind of sticky glaze on them as well. There we go. Last little bit. And then I'm going to go grab our twice baked potatoes out of the oven, and then we can serve up dinner. Look at this. Wonderful. Okay, let me grab those potatoes, and I'll be right back. Okay. Wonderful. The cheese is melted and everything is ready. Let's get our plate up and ready and slide these guys out of the way. Bring my cornbread over here. Got our dinosaurs. We'll grab a plate and we're going to get ready to serve up our dinner. Okay. Let me let's grab this potato right here. For dinner today, we have our twice baked potatoes filled with sour cream, white cheddar cheese, green onions, butter, garlic, salt, and just baked twice so that they're just full of wonderful flavor. And then we have our crispy teriyaki wings filled with just delicious teriyaki sauce that we seasoned with soy sauce, mirin, garlic, ginger, with this, then kind of cooked up so it's brown sugar and it's sticky, but also sweet and savory. And then we're going to serve it with our Dinosaur honey butter cornbread. Because when cornbread is a dinosaur, it's infinitely better. But a really simple and delicious, fun dinner tonight. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us here. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I try to do live cooking shows every single day, kind of show you what we're making for our family and hopefully teach you guys something along the way. Again, we do put all of our lives on a link on our page. So if you ever want to recreate any of our recipes at home, you can just go to our page and search for what we made. So our teriyaki wings and twice baked potatoes and honey cornbread. And you can always watch and cook along with me again. We also have a link to our Amazon storefront that has all of our different cooking gear and gadgets in it. So I've got my pans, my bakeware, all my sourdough stuff in there for you guys to check out. But again, thank you so much for joining us here. Don't forget to like and subscribe.